Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAT VRC preparation. In today's session, we'll be continuing with the RC that we had taken up in the first part of the session, right? This RC had appeared in your CAT exam in 2001. I've titled it as The Union Government and Discrimination, 633 words, 5 questions, kind of a little lengthy as based on case as compared to your current CAT standards, and also quite the passage is quite difficult to comprehend. So, but yes, for those of you who have not seen the passage explainer part, that is part one, you can find the link of that in the description of this video and watch that if you've not. For those of you who have watched it, you can carry on with this, and we're going to be discussing questions here. Okay, so let's start. Okay, now for those of you who might be watching these sessions for the first time, I'll just take you very briefly through the structure of the sessions. See, every single session caters to one RC, okay, and a session is made up of two parts. The first part is where I explain to you the passage in detail, paragraph by paragraph, and the second part is where I take you through the questions, where we discuss the questions. Okay, you are expected to have attempted the passage and read the passage and attempted the questions by yourselves. The link to do the same is available in the description of videos of both the parts. Okay, all right, now 40 such sessions make up a course that is titled as an anthology of RCs for your reading comprehension preparation for the CAT. All right, so I hope that's clear. Let's start. Coming to question number one, it says when the author writes globalizing our social inequities, the reference is to what? Guys, the point of reference for this question is here. He says that yet we would humbly submit that if globalizing our markets is thought as good for the national pocket, globalizing our social inequities, inequities would be the condition of there being a lot of inequality in terms of distribution of resources. Social inequities might not be so bad for the mass of our people. Discrimination, basically, social discrimination. Okay, so he says, yeah, so that's the point of reference. We also understood this diagram in the previous video, right? In the passage explainer video, where his point here has been that, well, our our governments have benefited economically by opening up our markets. Why not open up our social structures for the world to comment on? So that might help our bosses benefit, right? So that's the point. Let's assess the options one by one now. The first one says going beyond an internal deliberation on social inequity. So deliberation is to discuss a certain idea, to have a to mull over a certain idea, especially in a group, right? When you talk about a certain idea, trying to solve a problem, brainstorm, right? Have a discussion, So going beyond an internal deliberation, so yes, that's what he means. He means that why should we just limit the discussion to within the country? Let the world comment on it, right? Let's go beyond an internal discussion or internal deliberation on social inequity. So that's right. That makes sense. This we can mark this as a smallest slash capitalist scenario. Well, a weak or strong, almost a strong selection, in fact, but still, we still have three more options to go. So let's hold our horses. Option B, dealing with internal poverty through the economic benefits of globalization. Now, this option has mixed up both the points. The author has drawn a parallel here that, well, the economic benefits that we were able to gain from globalization by opening up our markets. Similarly, we can gain benefits for the masses by opening up the discussion on social inequity. Not that the economic benefits gained from here will be used here, right? So that's a clear distortion, as you can see. So you can eliminate this with a capital E. Coming to option C, going beyond an internal delimitation of social inequity. Now, delimitation is when you try to limit something, that's delimitation. And if you may have not been very careful, you might have just found this. You might have been stuck between option A and C, because then if you don't observe what exactly option C means to say here, you will have been stuck between two options, because you'd find them to be almost the same, but they are not, because option C seems to say that going beyond internal delimitation of social inequity, not the deliberation or discussion of social inequity. Okay, so it says let's not. So this seems to be implying that let's not just limit the social inequity to our country. Let's also start discriminating across the world. Let's engage in uh, deploying, deploying acts of social inequity across the world, not just in our country. Let's do it everywhere. Okay, so it's again a comical option, but if you are not mindful of this, if you just you were not able to figure out the difference here in these two phrases, then you would have definitely found it difficult to select between these two options. Okay, so your correct option, this can be easily eliminated with a capital E. Next, achieving disadvantaged people's empowerment globally. So as much as we can probably infer that the author might be in favor of doing this, but that's not what he means when he says globalizing our social inequities. Okay, globalizing is our social inequities was simply, as we noted, is it's about opening up the discussion about the social inequities in our society to the world, not about achieving disadvantages people empowerment. Although that is something that on the separate note he might be interested in, he might support, but that's not what he meant when he said this. So again, you can eliminate this option as well with a capital E. Your correct answer here will thus be option A. Okay. Okay, so let's start with the second question. According to the author, inverted representations as balm for the forsaken. You need to complete the sentence with one of the four options. The point of reference is here. Somehow, India's virtual beliefs elbow out actual concrete actualities. Inverted representations, as we know, have often been deployed in human histories as balm for the forsaken. Religion being the most persistent of such inversions. Now, let's review exactly what the author meant to say by this before we look at the options. So see guys, this inverted representations phrase or that whole expression, that whole sentence was basically a reference to the reasoning that the union government had gave internally to its forsaken citizens, to the citizens, especially the citizens who are like discriminated against, telling them, well, it's for your own good that we are not taking up this discussion on caste discrimination in the UN conference, because if we do that, then it might damage the country's reputation, that is your own country's country's image, country's representation, right? So it might damage your country's image, and well, that's the reason why it's for your own good that we are not doing it. Now, this idea that the union government is the facade, where they're trying to say that they are doing it for the good of the same people who are being discriminated against, when it is actually not for their good. What rather would have been good for them is the discussion took place in the forum, and maybe some policies were passed to rectify to address the discriminatory practices. Okay, but but according to the author, the government has just reversed or inverted the narrative. Instead of instead of what is telling them what is true, that the discussion might actually benefit them, they have inverted the narrative and they are telling them that, well, if we the discussion will actually not be in your favor because it will malign your own country's image, and hence hence the case of inverted representations, right? So the representation has been inverted here and then has been applied as a balm, has been used to placate these people. Okay, it is for your own good that we are not discussing this. Okay, so it is, so that's what they are trying to do here. That's what inverted representation in this case means. Applied as a balm for the forsaken means here. Okay, so let's look at the options. Is good for the forsaken and often deployed in the human histories is not good. It's not good for the forsaken. That's something we are very clear about. You don't even need to, you should definitely read the whole option, but this is reason enough to eliminate this option. Okay. Um, is good for the forsaken but not often deployed. It is often deployed. This part is incorrect, and good for the forsaken, this part is also incorrect. In the first option, often deployed in human history was correct, but the first part was incorrect. Anyhow, the whole option has to be correct to be selected, so both options will get eliminated. Occurs often as a means of keeping people oppressed. Occurs often as a means of keeping people oppressed. Yes, that's right. That's what he says, that have often been inverted representations have often been deployed in human histories as a balm for the forsaken. Um, so for the oppressed, to keep people oppressed, that's what he says. So yes, this can be the answer. Capital S. Coming to the next one, occurs often to invert the status quo. It has inverted the idea here, and the idea is not the status quo here. Inverting the status quo might in fact be in the benefit of the people who are being discriminated against, right? So no, that's not the case. You can eliminate this with quite easily. And yeah, so that's your correct answer here, guys, will be option C. Yeah? Coming. Okay, so question number 3. The passage, the stem says, based on the passage, which broad areas unambiguously, that means with complete conviction, there is no doubt, not ambiguous at all, like you're really sure, fall under the purview of the UN conference being discussed. Okay, so which areas unambiguously, without any doubt, fall under the purview of the UN conference being discussed. That means you cannot include the options. You cannot include the options which the author is proposing should be discussed or should be taken under the purview of the UN conference. We can only take the ones, we can only select the ones which are already under the purview. The ones which are being contended uh, about, like for example, caste discrimination is not in the purview of the UN conference so far. The author is contending that it should be. The union government is saying that it should not be, but it is not under the purview yet. So you cannot select that. You can only select the ones that are without any doubt already under the purview. Okay. And there are 2 points of references for this which are relevant. In the first point of reference, the author has already noted that union government's present position vis-a-vis the upcoming United Nations conference on racial and related discrimination. So racial discrimination and related discrimination, right? 2 points. And he again notes here as to the technicality about blah 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 that the conference is also about related discrimination. So yes, basically two category two items, right? One is racial discrimination and the other is related discrimination. Okay, so let's check the option. So you're supposed to select which of these combinations is unambiguously falls under the purview of the UN conference. Okay, so the first one, racial prejudice, is yes, racial prejudice is basically racial discrimination in a paraphrased manner. Prejudice counts for discrimination. Racial pride does not count, so B cannot be the answer. You can eliminate the last option because B is part of it. Discrimination, racial or otherwise. Now this is a very close one. Okay, option C is a pretty close one, but many people for the same reason might have just ended up going for option C here as well, because see guys, the author has said that discrimination, racial discrimination is totally is accounted for. It's given in the passage. But when you say otherwise, it does not just mean related discrimination. It means any kind of discrimination. It opens up the whole Pandora's box, not just like we are going to talk about discrimination, be it racial, caste based, language based, gender based, everything. So this otherwise part is definitely objectionable, and hence we cannot is not like not every kind of discrimination is part of the purview is falls under the purview of the UN conference unambiguously, right? So this can be eliminated. C cannot be here. Or the C statement cannot be here. Hence you can also eliminate option C and option B. So your anyways left with option only A. Anyhow, let's still check the other statements. Caste related discrimination, obviously not. It's a contended issue, but it is not it's not something that unambiguously falls under the purview of the UN conference being discussed. So yeah, last one, race-related discrimination. Yes, race-related discrimination. The author has already, as you already noted, the author has mentioned that related discrimination. So yes, this is accounted for, and hence your correct answer will be option A and E. Okay. Okay. Question number 4. According to the author, the sociologist who argued that race is a biological category and caste is a social one. Well, you need to complete the sentence with one of the options, right? So generally shares the same orientation as the authors on many of the central issues discussed. No, we cannot. That is, first of all, it is out of bounds. Like we don't really know whether these two guys, what, like whether they in general share this an orientation or a point of view. Out in general is can be outside of the purview of the passage, right? But general, because not everything about their opinions on every topic has been taken here, has been noted here. So we can't say anything about generally whether they share or they do not. In fact, on the contrary, you can make a point that directly opposes this, because if you see here, the author mentions that having earlier fiercely opposed the implementation of Mandal Commission report, the said sociologist is at least to be complimented now. That means earlier the sociologist's point of view with respect to this discussion on race was, or with respect to caste being considered as a category, was different, right? That means that that totally goes against this option. That means at least at some point of time in the past he did not agree at all with the author. Right now he does partially, but yeah, so generally shares the same orientation is something that is totally uncalled for. You can eliminate this with a capital D. Option B tangentially admits to the existence of caste as a category. Yes, that's true. It's given in the point of reference. It says, the author says that yes, a reputed sociologist has recently argued that where race is a biological category, caste is a social one. So he does admit, but does he admit it tangentially? Yes, he does. Because just look at this part. For he should be complimented now for admitting, however, tangentially that caste discrimination is a reality. So yes, this is totally called for with a capital S. You can select it. Going to option C, admits the incompatibility between the people of different race and caste. Guys, the author has talked about incompatibility and even more so in the context of of the sociologist himself. In the same context, he has talked about compatibility, but the incompatibility is not between the people. The incompatibility is between caste discrimination and racial discrimination, not between people of different race and different castes. This is a very it's a classical case of distortion. So option C will be an error of distortion and can be eliminated with a capital E. Coming to the next part, admits indirectly that both caste-based prejudice and racial discrimination exist. Okay, now this is again a very close option because it is partly correct. See the options. There's a quote in that movie. There was this quote, right? Byomkesh Bakshi. हिंदी में था. It said that सच के पास वाला झूठ पकड़ना मुश्किल होता है. That's exactly how you're difficult to eliminate options behave. That's their characteristic because they'll be partially correct. And then option D is it admits indirectly that both caste based. So it is true about so far as it is talking about admitting indirectly that caste based prejudice exists, but so far as racial discrimination is concerned, that has not been admitted indirectly by the sociologist. The sociologist totally agrees that the racial discrimination exists, but the indirect admission or the tangential admission is only with respect to caste-based prejudice, not racial discrimination. You can also read the point of reference. See, it says for admitting, however, tangentially that caste discrimination is a reality, not that admitting, however, tangentially that caste discrimination and racial discrimination is a reality. Racial discrimination is pretty sure about, right? So you can eliminate this with a capital E. Again, another case of error of distortion, option D as well. The correct answer will thus be option B. Okay. Okay, guys. So coming to the question number 5, an important message in the passage, if one accepts the dialectic between nature and culture, is that. Let's go through the options. The point of reference here is in the last paragraph, right? The first option says the results of the Human Genome Project reinforces racial differences. No, this is factually incorrect. In fact, the findings of the Human Genome Project did not reinforce. They reinforced the idea that racial differences are constructed. They are not inherent, right? They did not. So they did not reinforce. They actually went against the inherent nature of racial differences. They said that these are created by people themselves in the society. So this will be eliminated. Option B, race is at least partially a social construct. Yes, this is in fact what the author has been trying to do here in the last paragraph. And in fact, not just in the last paragraph, in the last two paragraphs. See, guys, in the second paragraph towards the end, the author's inclination has turned towards trying to show how biology can also be a biology. He says, right, that biology in important ways that affect the lives of many peoples, many millions, is in itself perhaps a social construction. Okay, so his focus has been on that, and when he talks about at this point of reference, just let's read this. He says, if anything, they suggest the dialectic between the findings of the genome studies. If anything, they suggest that environmental factors impinge on gene function as a dialectic seems to unfold between nature and culture. That means that the organism develops as a product of nature, biology, and culture. That is social construction. Culture represents social construction, and nature is biology, right? So as part of both, so both of the factors are involved together in the development of the organism. Okay, and by seeing this, okay, taken, it would seem thus that biology as the constitution of pigmentation, that means as a factor, enters the picture first only as part of the dialectic. Okay, so he's implying here that biology, it seems thus, he says that it seems that the biology, even biology, might not have been an ultimately inherent factor. Even biology seems to have entered as a factor in the development of the organism as part of this dialectic, as part of this process of exchange of information and dialectic between nature and culture. Okay, and right. So and when he says that, what he's basically trying, what he is in turn implied is that any biological, so if biology also is part of the dialectic, that means it is made from both culture and nature. That means it is something that comes from nature and to some extent might be inherent, but it is also something that comes from culture. That means it is a social, it can be a social construct to some extent. So if biology can be a social construct to some extent, then any biological categories can also be a social construct to some extent, and race, which is a biological category, can be a social construct to some extent. And that's what option B says, right? It says race is at least partially a social construct. So that is something that can be inferred from here. So yeah, it can be the correct answer, marking it as a capitalist and moving on. Discrimination is at least partially a social construct. Now this is an option that the author will definitely agree with. Okay, like we can be like, it's not even we won't be assuming anything at all if we make the case that yes, the author will agree with this, because he does believe that discrimination is in fact he's going on the opposite side. He of course he believes that discrimination is a social construct. He also believes that caste is a social construct, and also racism, he has also tried to make a point that even race is a social construct, partially, right, as option exemplified in option B. But is that what he wanted to convey when he talked about the dialectic between nature and culture? No, his focus was on trying to make the point that biology was also entered as a factor in the development of the organization or organism as part of this dialectic, not directly by itself, right? And hence is a social. So his focus was on biology or biological categories like races, not on discrimination. Okay, so hence you can, this is true. Option C is true, but it is not relevant to the question, and hence it's a case of TBNR or IBNR, and hence can be eliminated. TBNR is true but not relevant, or IBNR is inferred, can be inferred but not relevant to the question step. These type of incorrect options are usually tricky. Option D, caste is at least partially a social construct. Caste is completely a social construct, but that's not ground enough to eliminate this option, because at least being a social construct satisfies completely being a social construct. So yeah, but the problem with this option is, again, this is not something that the author wanted to call it. It's again a TBNR. It's another case of TBNR. It's true, yes, it is at least. In fact, it's completely a social construct. So, but that's not what he wanted to convey. He was not focused on caste. He was focused on biological factors, race especially, right? So, yeah, that can be eliminated with a capital E. Okay. Okay, guys. So coming to the vocabulary part. Now, see the way we go about the vocabulary so far as the anthology sessions are concerned. I'm not going to read out uh, the meaning and discuss the meaning of each and every word which has been marked here, because we'll have a separate course which will be dedicated to vocabulary building, a series of separate courses, in fact. So and to keep these sessions short, what I'm going to do is just going to list, mark the words which I figured that you may have found, some of you may have found challenging, and then provide the contextual meaning of those words. Yeah. Okay. So yes, that's how we're going to go about vocabulary. What you can do is you can simply pause the video here, go through the word in its context and as part of the sentence where it occurs, read that and then read the meaning of the sentence. That's as simple as that, right? So you can do that, and I'm going to move on to the next part. Okay, guys, coming to the analysis and readings part, the first parameter that we'll discuss is the genre. Now, the genre is basically the source, the domain of the source from where the passage has been taken. It can be psychology, economics, management, science, technology, or politics, governance, culture, social sciences, history, many of them. So, and why is it relevant? Why is it relevant to for me to tell you what genre the passage was from? Because, guys, there is utility. There's some utility here, because let's suppose you faced some difficulty while reading this particular passage in terms of the terminology or in terms of the ideas that were discussed here. It will definitely benefit you if you can at least read 2 to 3 to 4 articles from this particular genre. That will increase your familiarity, at least to some extent. Especially if you found it really difficult, you should definitely read at least a couple of or 2 or 3 articles from the genre. Okay, if you found it easy, that's all right. But if you found it difficult, that means there is something really for you to gain there. Okay, you really need to gain some familiarity in that genre. All right, that's the first parameter. Second parameter, readability. Readability is with respect to the passage, not the RC. When I say RC, I am talking about the passage as well as the questions. When I say passage, we're just talking about the passage. Readability score, which is mentioned here, it is about this. It scores the passage. It basically tells you how easy or difficult was the passage to comprehend. And the way it can help you is, if you figure that for a particular genre, uh, if you figure that generally your understanding or your scores, your accuracy goes really low whenever the readability of the passage is quite high, you can definitely benefit from exposing yourself to material that is more dense, that is more difficult to understand, that's a higher level of readability, that has higher score of readability, right? So yeah, so that's one way in which you can factor in this insight, this takeaway. Next, length of the passage. The length of the passage, as I always say, should always be seen in terms of not just words, but rather words per question. The number of words you're required to read to answer one question of the passage. For CAT, this is usually around 100 words per question. Again, if you let's suppose you find your accuracy to be going down when you encounter passages which are lengthy, uh, in that case you might want to get more practice with respect with the lengthy passages, right, which offer less questions per word, or for which you have to read where you have to read more number of words per question. So yeah, that's passage length. Idle time, yes, idle time would be. So I've also mentioned the idle time to read the passage here. This is the maximum amount of time that you should take. If it is less than this, that's good, as so far as it doesn't hamper your comprehension. And the idle time for maximum amount of time that you should take for solving the questions here, right? This is the total idle time for solving the passage. Uh, and again, this is with respect to the time that you'd be expected to solve this in your exam conditions on the D-Day, right? When you're practicing, it makes sense to initially when you're just starting your preparation, it makes sense to go gradually. Don't try to speed things up there, because speed always follows accuracy. It's never the other way around. Accuracy never follows speed. Speed follows accuracy. Once your accuracy goes really up, once you start getting more confident, that's when you can increase your speed. Okay. All right. Next, so what I've also done here is, with every passage, I'm going to provide you a couple of articles, and preferably by the same author, at least, or if not, at least in the same genre, right? So which will give you some familiarity in terms of, if you face difficulty, again, as I said, in the genre of reading, you can definitely go and check out these articles. The link for these articles have been provided in the provided in the description of the video, so you can check that out. Okay. Yeah, so that's about the analysis and reading part. Okay, guys, so with this, we are done with this session. This was the fifth and final RC of the politics and governance genre. And next, we'll be starting with the fourth genre. And for those of you who have not watched the other RCs, have not solved the other RCs and watched the other videos, you can go to the playlist of the course and do that. Okay, guys, so with this, we have come to the conclusion of the session. Now, for those of you who have not watched the first part of this particular RC, this particular session, You can click here on this card and it will take you on this video, and it will take you to the first part where you can go through the passage explainer to understand the passage in detail. And for those of you who want to watch the intro video of the course, you can click on this card here. It will take you to the intro video of the course. And for those and others again, and definitely if you like the session, do share it with the others who might find it helpful and useful, and definitely do subscribe to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAT VRZ preparation. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.